He saw it.
He saw it in his mind, would work out the bugs in his mind, would only finally assemble a perfect working device typically, and then draw the drawings for it for the manufacturers or for patents and the like. So it's to have that ability, to have that focus, might be a way to bypass a lot of wasted energy where people who have less that of ability to focus their imagination intensely might have to struggle longer in the creative process, especially if they had to do so alone. Keep in mind, even though we might always be with people, there's always the slight chance that we could be alone in perhaps a critical situation, perhaps, like heaven forbid, a wreck on a country road and you're in a water and you might have to think quickly, or you're stranded in a blizzard, you might have to think quickly. Well, if you have a keen sense of imagination, you might be able to go through various scenarios in your mind of how you might freeze to death or build a snow shelter, and might be able to quickly make the right decision, where if someone else alone with less keen of imagination, a quote more normal person, might, if they didn't have prior knowledge to how to do it, if they had to form all this spontaneously, it might be a little more difficult than someone who might have a more stronger imagination might be able to form an idea or a plan spontaneously and quickly. That would be an interesting experiment. I might be wrong with this. It may be your keen sense of imagination might backfire on you, of course. It's an interesting question.
I would say that's a case-by-case basis.
I tend to agree with you. It would literally be case by case and quite dependent on the situation. Of course, a lot of times it might be a non-emergency situation where you're simply trying to create something faster, or let's say doing homework by yourself on a difficult math problem, let's say, or something like that. But anyway.
Well, another thing that it's characterized is what I think I was listening to NPR and them talking about it when a whole lot of stuff clicked, and it was describing certain characteristics of mine. And it's like there's a kind of empathic disconnect in that you have trouble, like a lot of people have a natural sort of capacity to read other people and understand their feelings, and I feel like I didn't grow up with that. For me, it's all intellectually based, learned from hitting my head against the wall in like awkward social situations again and again and again. And every once in a while, I still have this habit of just occasionally being atrociously, cluelessly insensitive. And I don't like whatever it is that allows you to sort of cue in naturally on people's feelings, I don't have. But I'm clever enough to like use an intellectual crutch to figure it out, kind of, but sometimes after the fact, after I screwed up.
Sometimes you might not be able to do it quickly enough. And in fact, using my memory, especially in my more distant past, in my 20s and preceding, that often crept up with me, or at least occasionally crept up with me, where I would forget to do something, or I might act inappropriately, perhaps, not being conscious of other people's feelings enough. And with me, I would usually attribute that to my sense of autism, and my sense of being wrapped up in my own world and my own thoughts and stuff. Sometimes, on the other hand, I was able to do the exact opposite and cue into people better than my sisters, let's say. And a lot of times in the distant past, they would come to me for advice on prospective boyfriends, and I would tell them just by meeting the boyfriend briefly, maybe for 5 minutes or less, whether it would work out or not, and why, and what were the likely problems to arise, and how to solve them.
That's pretty
neat.
A
lot of times my projections were correct, and hence they would come back to me for future advice. This is mainly my older sister Susan, and I guess perhaps my younger sister Patty a little bit. They both did it off and on over the
So
years.
they found you to be very insightful sometimes in the situations that were not clear to other people, that you had a certain clarity of. Yeah, exactly. I have other friends that are that way.
Yeah, they wouldn't see, typically they might not see a negative trait of the boyfriend. Like, for instance, he might be likely to cheat. Are we concluding?
Yes. Now is the time when we have to say that the Mad Scientist Tea Party wants to thank thisismyband.com very much for their support of our notions around here. And we also want to say that it is a scientifically proven fact that as long as there's something moving on the screen and noise coming out of the box, people will sit and watch it. It's also a scientifically proven fact that things are a lot more like they are now than they ever have been. And you don't watch the show often, do you?
No.
And that when you're looking for something you've lost, it's going to be in the last place you look.
Yeah.
Very often, yes.
Very often the case.
And be sure and watch Mount Dungeon on Thursday nights.